Welcome back to the deep dive. So we usually spend our time here unpacking, these massive industry trends or the latest flashy gadgets. But today, I've got a spec sheet in front of me for a single piece of hardware that claims to be the silent backbone of modern AV. We are looking at the Kramer CLS-AOCH 6033.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
But you are right to focus on it. It sounds mundane. I mean, it's just a cable, after all, until your screen goes black in the middle of a critical presentation because you used the wrong one. We're really diving into a piece of critical infrastructure here.
Exactly. And honestly, looking at these specs, the mission today is to figure out why a simple cord needs to be this complex. We're talking active optical technology, pluggable heads. It just seems like overkill for plugging a screen into a wall.
It does, until you realize that in professional AV, the cable is almost always the weakest link. This specific model is designed to solve a very specific triangle of problems: extreme distance, uncompromised signal quality, and the absolute nightmare of installing cables in tight spaces.
Okay, let's start with that installation part, because that's the first thing that jumped out at me. The documentation highlights a pluggable design.
Right. If you've ever tried to run a standard HDMI cable through a conduit or a pipe inside a wall, you know the struggle. The cable itself might fit, but the head, the actual HDMI connector, is like a brick. It gets stuck on every single turn.
So this Kramer model addresses that by making the HDMI connectors removable.
Exactly. You pull off the standard wide HDMI head, and underneath is this tiny micro HDMI connector.
And the kit includes that pull-through capsule, right?
Yes. You snap that capsule over the delicate micro HDMI end, and suddenly you're threading a needle rather than shoving a block through a tube. It makes a massive, massive difference for installers.
And looking at the dimensions here, the cable itself is ultra-thin, only 3.4 millimeters in diameter. And the bending radius is just 6 millimeters. That is incredibly tight.
It is, and that flexibility is actually a perfect segue into the tech inside. The reason it can be that thin and flexible is that it isn't a traditional copper cable. It's active optical.
Okay, let's unpack that. Most of us are used to copper HDMI cables. What's the functional difference when you switch to active optical at, say, this length?
It all comes down to physics, really. Copper is great for short hops, connecting your console to the TV 3 feet away, but copper has electrical resistance. As you stretch that cable to 10 meters, which is what we're looking at here, or even longer, the signal degrades. It's called attenuation.
So that's when you start getting those digital glitches or the sparklies on the screen.
Exactly, or the image just cuts out entirely. This Kramer cable is a hybrid. It uses copper for power and the handshake data, so it's still plug and play, but it uses 4 strands of optical fiber to transmit the actual video and audio. Light just doesn't have the same resistance issues as electricity.
Which would explain why the datasheet claims 4K resolution at 60 Hz with 0 signal loss.
Precisely. It can push 18 gigabits per second without breaking a sweat. And there's a secondary benefit to using light instead of electricity for the video signal. Immunity.
Immunity to interference.
Correct. In a commercial ceiling or a hospital wall, you're surrounded by power lines, fluorescent ballasts, maybe even medical imaging equipment. That creates electromagnetic interference, or EMI. A long copper wire acts like an antenna. It just picks up that noise.
But optical fiber is glass.
It's glass. It ignores magnetic fields completely.
That's a key insight for anyone doing critical installations. You don't want your display flickering just because the AC unit kicked on next door. Now, does this shift to fiber affect the audio or other features?
Not at all. It supports the full stack. We're talking PCM 8-channel, Dolby Digital True HD, DTS HD Master Audio. It acts exactly like a copper cable to your devices. It also passes HDCP 2.2, which you need for copyright protection on 4K movies, and handles HDR and CEC commands so your remote still works.
It's interesting you mentioned hospitals earlier. I noticed the jacket is listed as low smoke and halogen free. That sounds intense.
It is. It's a serious safety standard. Standard PVC cables, if they catch fire, they release toxic black smoke and halogen.
Corrosive gases.
Exactly. And in a public building, that is a huge liability. This rating means if the worst happens, this cable won't contribute to toxicity or obscure visibility during an evacuation.
It really reinforces that this isn't just a consumer accessory, which I guess brings us to the price. It's listed at roughly $268.
Which is steep, yeah, if you compare it to a checkout aisle cable. But you'd have to contextualize it. You aren't paying for the plastic, you're paying for the 24-karat gold plating, the corrosion resistance, and primarily the reliability.
Right. If you seal a cable inside a wall, the cost of ripping that wall open because a cheap cable failed is way, way higher than $268.
That is the buy it nice or buy it twice logic. It's professional infrastructure.
So to wrap this up for you listening, the Kramer CLS-AOCH 6033 is it's a high-tech solution for when you need to move a lot of data over long distance through a very small hole without any room for error.
That is a perfect summary.
So here's a thought to leave you with. We spend hours obsessing over the resolution of the screens on our walls, the glass we look at. But perhaps the real magic of the digital age is the glass hidden inside the walls, the optical fibers that make the image appear in the first place.
The invisible infrastructure.
Something to think about next time you hit play. Thanks for diving in with us.